Google is back in news after facing the Competition Commission of India for antitrust activities. Google is now up in arms against OTT platforms, which are taking the tech giant to court over its app billing policy. Days after Disney Hotstar app approached the Madras High Court trying to stop Google from removing the app from its Google Play Store, the Indian Digital Media Industry Foundation, body that represents streaming players in India, has approached the CCI, or Competition Commission of India, to challenge Google's app billing policy. The industry body says that Google's commission fee is both unjustifiable and harmful, and that its policy could put an end to smaller OTT businesses and channels, and those especially in the content curation business. In the matter of Disney Hotstar, remember, the Madras High Court also granted an interim injunction to Disney Hotstar, directing the streaming platform to pay a lower commission of 4% to Google for using its in-app payment system. But this is a temporary relief. It's only given to one player. Other players are currently up in arms against Google. Nikhil Pahwa, who is the founder of MediaNama, joining us to talk more on the story. Nikhil, good afternoon to you. I want to quickly begin by asking, what exactly are OTT players demanding?
Shweta, actually what's happening with the OTT players is that they want this, and this is what pretty much the entire industry is demanding, that the CCI's order, which essentially said that you need to have a separate billing system which allows these apps to do billing off the Google Play Store to be allowed to function independent of the Play Store. Google's contention is that they are essentially in compliance with the CCI order, and all of these players that have gone to court, I think there are now 15 companies, they're saying that CCI is not in that Google is not in compliance. What Google has done is that they're basically charging a certain percentage, like they have to pay anything they have to pay Google anything of 11 to 36% commission if users pay for something, let's say for a Hotstar subscription, for using a third-party billing system. But if they use Google's billing system, then they have to pay 15 to 30% commission. So broadly similar. And the contention is that why is it that you're not allowing us to bill independently altogether? And why are we being forced to give Google a commission when we are subscribing to something? So there's matrimony.com, which has been leading this push, in fact, since the very beginning. There's An Academy, there's Trudy Madly, there are a bunch of these OTT players that have also gone. And at the core of this is that, I remember I was talking to a founder about this when the issue first began, and they were saying that, look, here's the thing, I acquire my customers using advertising, and most advertising in India is Google or Facebook, so Google gets my money, and then when I've acquired the customer, then even on the transaction they want a cut of that. So then what is left for me to run my business? And I think that's a fair point, that these players are making.
Absolutely. A very fair point. I want to break it down for the benefit of our viewers. So let's understand and let's assume that a consumer, me or Krishna, pays 100 rupees to Hotstar for, consuming their content, of which almost 36% goes back to Google. Is that correct? Is that the commission?
Well,
36 rupees of the 100 rupee.
So currently, the plan was up to about 30% could go back to Google, and right now that's the thing. But with the order, Google will only collect 4% commission right now.
Okay, but that's particularly for Hotstar, not for other existing OTT players.
It's for all billing that happens on the platform. See, the stay order or whatever injunction they've received at the courts is only for the companies that have actually gone to court. So essentially, what's also happening is that some of these companies are trying to get others to also go to court, because when there is a large number of players, then the court takes it a lot more seriously, saying that everyone's impacted, and everyone who goes to court can potentially, on the basis of others receiving some kind of relief from the court, will also get it, because the complaint is the same, the grounds are the same, right? So this is why you have 15 companies now doing this. So it's the disproportionate amount of money that all of them are challenging. If, let's say, I haven't gone to court, then I will still have to pay this large amount
Right. Nikhil, if I were to ask you, there needs to be global standards for these things, right? For the way an OTT platform is charged, it's Google we're talking about. Same platforms exist with geo-specifications in different geographies and territories. How come we don't have a uniform way of what percentage an OTT player charges per geography?
That's a great question that actually started this whole problem. So what had happened was that so in the US this commission was being charged. In India it wasn't being charged, and so there's a company called Fortnite that went to court saying that they shouldn't have to pay Google this commission. So they went to court against Apple as well as Google, and there are other companies like Match.com that have also done that. Now, Google, my guess is Google started imposing this commission in the rest of the world because these companies could have simply gone to court. In court, they could have said that, hey, look, they're charging us 30% in the US, but they're charging 0 in India. Mm-hmm. So for the Indian companies, what happened was they went from 0% commission that they were paying because they could build off the Google Play Store to then suddenly having been told that they'll have to pay 30%. So the hit for them was much bigger, but it started because of this need for uniformity that Google, and this is my reading of it, wanted to demonstrate in court. And this issue initially happened, if you remember, just after Paytm's app was taken down from the Google Play Store. And the Indian startup community, they're in a WhatsApp group, a bunch of them, there's like 400 odd founders there. They actually came together for the first time. I haven't seen them come together on an issue for decades now, but they came together to say, hey, listen, we have to fight this together. And I haven't seen that kind of cohesion. And it's become a movement in the sense. They've even formed an organization called ADIF. And they're consciously watching Google's every move. So Google essentially united the Indian startup ecosystem against itself by saying that they're charging 30% commission.
Right. And this brings me to the larger question of Google, it's OTT players versus Google, but for the longest it's been CCI versus Google, and that application of course is with NCLAT. NCLAT has partially upheld CCI's order saying that Google in fact has indulged in anti-competitive practices by asking manufacturers to pre-install its apps. We look at Google, a behemoth, an unparalleled tech ecosystem, using that ecosystem to its full advantage and being penalized for it, not just in India, Nikhil, but also in European Union, in the US, and there are various rulings which Google has in fact challenged and lost. We are looking at Google indulging in anti-competitive practices in almost every region now.
So the thing is that, there's no harm in a player being dominant. There is a harm in a player abusing that dominance. Mm-hmm. So for example, WhatsApp is a dominant messaging platform, but the CCI found that WhatsApp wasn't abusing its dominance to the detriment of other players. It was just a natural monopoly that got created. Google has cemented its monopoly by the host of services it has, by the contracts that it has signed. But if you look at it on the other side, Apple has done the exact same thing. When you're in an Apple ecosystem, quite often, earlier you couldn't even find like charging cables that would be ubiquitous in other spaces, right? And so Apple also does the same thing, which is why similar cases there against Apple in the US, and the CCI is also investigating the Apple ecosystem. Mm-hmm. See, the players like Apple and Google, right? When the app ecosystem started booming in 2008 after the launch of the iPhone, these players basically they built an app store which many of us have used to download apps, etc. And we moved from a web-based ecosystem, which was very broad and you could go to any website in the world and see it, to an app-based ecosystem. So it's centralized power with app stores. And these app stores are now largely controlled by other players. So like Apple, hardware company, computing company, device company now controls an app ecosystem for iOS. Same way Google for Android, even though Google spread across multiple players. So this dominance and this potential for abuse of dominance is what is problematic. Until Google imposed this condition of 30% in about 2-3 years ago, no one treated it as an abusive player. Now the perception of Google has changed. The angst when Google does something is greater. its dominance is being seen very closely. And this is happening across the world. I don't necessarily agree with all the moves that are being made because, look, even with this, when you, let's say that you cannot, there are also security considerations when third-party app stores are allowed to proliferate and no warnings are given
Right.
on devices, right? Cybersecurity is a major concern. Just like we saw fake lending apps getting created, and then we asked Google to start taking them down because they were all being downloaded from the Google Play Store. So at one level, you need that dominance to maintain some sort of, security and cleanliness in the space. At another level, you also don't want them to be dominant, so you want competitive players to come up who might not be as responsible and as safe. So it's a very tricky balance to figure out over there.
Okay. And in that tricky balance, I think the key operative word, Nikhil, that you pointed out is abuse of dominance. It's not that Google is dominant and that's the problem. It's how it's abusing its dominance and perhaps reason why losing all the antitrust rulings, not just in India, but also abroad. We will, of course, keep tracking all those details. Nikhil, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks very much for taking time out. With that, of course, it's a wrap on this edition. Thanks very much for watching.